With any of these new programs, you have new words and phrases that are usually generated to apply to whatever attribute that they want to foster on the American public. And this is one, local goals. And up until today, I only knew one local goal. Today, I know 3 local goals. And it is a person that has agreed to consume foods grown within 100 miles of their house or their home. And these are 2 magazines that have actually had articles. You'll notice that this one has a bicycle. He has used an ecologically sustainable mode of transportation to go out into the farmland and harvest his daily substance. He's not degrading Mother Earth by using gasoline to go out and harvest it. Gasoline is a sin in a way that you would say, I am preventing a future generation from accessing the same global resources that I'm doing so, because when he burns that 1 gallon of gasoline that goes somewhere, that means that some future generation is deprived of that. So we're talking about intergenerational equity. Here is a poster. It says food miles, the distance food has to travel to get to your plate. This is a poster intended for schools. With each one of these modes of transportation, there is some form that degrades Mother Earth. And here we have what I think is the most important aspect of this poster. It's a big yellow caution sign. So we want to instill in children the thought that I should care about what is happening in order to get that food to my table and what it's doing to Mother Earth. Food policy councils, they're popping up all across the country. And they will invariably write a food charter. The term food citizenship is defined as the practice of engaging in food-related behaviors. This will be one of the planks of the food charter. Now, where was that when we saw behavior? Well, we're instilling children in that behavior. So now let's go back and see what the rest of that quote looks like. We need to ensure that our behavior supports rather than threatens the development of a democratic, socially, and economically just and environmentally sustainable food system. Make the point here that if you don't support it, you're threatening. There's no fence sitting. You're absolutely going to have to enthusiastically support this, or your food citizenship may come into question. Next quote. Food democracy or food citizenship recognizes that consumers can identify the interest of others. Who are they? Food workers, other consumers, future generations, and other species. We're talking about, again, intergenerational equity and species equity in this particular quote. Where this quote came from is from a thesis at Drexel University. The person was looking for a doctorate, and she put in here the language that she thought the higher people in education would give her a doctorate. This is actually a sustainable food system. This is the name of this PowerPoint presentation. Your role as the nutrition expert. This is Food Policy Council from King and Seattle and King County. And this is just one goal that was in this particular PowerPoint presentation. Social and environmental justice from seed to table. So when we put the seed in the ground, we have to make sure that everything associated with that act is socially and environmentally just. Grow it, harvest it, get it to the table. It all has to be socially and environmentally just. Now here's a food charter, and I want to encourage everybody to get a copy. That's one of your handouts. And I'm going to just briefly go over one quote from this. It talks about food security. And I honestly thought that if I had food security, I had sufficient food so that the wife could fix me breakfast, or my refrigerator was full of food. But it actually means a situation in which all community residents are able to obtain a safe, culturally acceptable, nutritionally adequate diet through a sustainable system that maximizes community, self-reliance, and social justice, and the ability of the agricultural community to support that system. Now, of course, what is defined as adequately diet or acceptable will not be up to the individual. There will be a whole stakeholder group that come together, create this food policy and the Food Council, and they will determine what is actually nutritionally adequate. Well, talked about social justice enough that I thought we ought to finally define what we're talking about. Social justice is progressive taxation, income redistribution, property redistribution, equality of opportunity, and equality of outcome. So that's actually what we're talking about. The Food Policy Council that is being created right now in Alabama will go to Montgomery and lobby for all of these things that you have just seen. All the time purporting to save the family farm. In Alabama, we have already had 3 food summits. This particular food summit was held in 2009, and here's a weekly newspaper out of Birmingham that is extolling the great wonders of this program. This was held November the 12th and 14th at the United Methodist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. Now in Virginia, we actually have the Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia Tech, and Virginia State University that are participating in the very same thing. It says participating organizations of the Virginia Food System Council include, and there they are. You're just right along with us. Maybe a little ahead of us. Now, one of the handouts, and I hope that you get enough of these to take home with you. If you want extra ones, or I don't have enough on the table back there, let me know. I've got more in the car. This is a trifold that we created trying to talk about in plain language what sustainable agriculture is going to do to the family farm and what it's going to do to your table. So I encourage everyone to get a copy of it. This is the Alabama Farmers Co-op magazine. I think this is maybe an issue back. And the title of this article is Coming to Grips with Sustainability. And it talks about the ecological footprint. So I went out and got a few graphics that deal with ecological footprint. There's just tons of these things out there. And this one is more interesting than any one that I've seen because it showed resource flows and pollution flows. In other words, how many resources are we extracting from Mother Earth to support our lifestyle, and how much pollution are we putting back into Mother Earth in order to maintain our daily life. And it talks about the ecological footprint, and it says that we're going to measure that footprint of that farmer. Right now we have surveys that ask questions dealing with corn, soybean, wheat, and cotton. Later on, we're going to have questions that will include water quality, biodiversity, ecosystem services, and economic and social matters, dare I say, social justice. So now let me swap to another subject. Let me pick up on freedom of choice, social health, and transportation. Now, I know that if I said you have freedom of choice, you would all agree on some kind of common concept for the definition of freedom of choice. But if you go into a meeting with one of these facilitators, and you sit down and you begin to come to a consensus, an agreement with definitions that you think are applicable to the words that have been used in that particular session, and you leave in agreement, you're going to be rudely awakened to what you actually have agreed to. Now, if you go to our website, keepourrights.org, scroll down on the left-hand side, you will find a glossary of terms that facilitators use. All right, now, I'm going to punch the button, and here now is a publication from the state of Minnesota. Now, this is, I actually have a hard copy of this. You can go out online and download it if you want to. Under construction, tools and techniques for local planning. And on page 73, it actually has the definition for freedom of choice. People should be able to choose where they live and do business as long as they pay the identifiable cost of those choices and do not impose unaccounted for cost on other people or nature now or in the future. So, we're actually talking about identifying and compensating disadvantaged human beings, other species that are currently existing, and future species of human beings and other critters or whatever they may be in the future. Now, I want to ask you, if that is the definition of freedom of choice, what is the definition of economic development, whether it's rural or urban? And if you leave thinking that the facilitator, the planner, is talking about economic development in terms that you're familiar with, you're behind the 8 ball in the worst of the way. Because consumption and production is too much and has to be reduced, and that is the concept of economic development that they're under right now. Transportation. I always thought transportation was just a mode for me to get to point A to B. Well, transportation is not an end in itself. It is merely a means by which we support individual and collective goals and objectives. So collective goals and objectives is again part of this socialism that we're transforming into. If you look at the transportation funding options for the state of South Carolina, that's the actual name of this report, 2003 through 2022, equity issues include income distribution, urban and rural and regional geographic differences, and intergenerational concerns, intergenerational equity. Now I'm just going to pick up on one paragraph out of Agenda 21. This is Chapter 40.4, and it's just 3 sentences in this paragraph, but I'm only going to look at 2. And it says, commonly used indicators such as the gross national product and measurements of individual resource flows or pollution flows do not provide adequate indications of sustainability. This was 1992. They did not, at that time, have the technology to look at a national or regional pollution flows or resource extraction from Mother Earth, or at the individual, what the individual was actually doing. Next sentence. Indicators of sustainable development need to be developed to provide solid basis for decision-making at all levels, and we're talking about all levels of government, and to contribute to what a self-regulating sustainability system. It's intended that the system be self-regulating. So now here is an actual report. If you're looking, you want to look it up. Multi-state VMT. Anybody know what VMT is? Vehicle miles traveled. And part of the agreement that is going on in Pulaski, Tennessee is, I keep saying that, Virginia, is to reduce the amount of travel in a vehicle. That's part of the agreement that they've already done. Well, now here is a multi-state report. This is institutional and legal analysis. And in Florida, all the way to Maine, all of these states, including some organizations in Canada, and there's a total of 35, have come to this report. Now, just quite briefly, what this report says is that we want to ensure that we know where you've been in your automobile. Right now, automobiles are equipped with an internal GIS or a tracking system, so that when you pull up to the pump, the information stored in that computer would be transferred to the database and the computer within that pump, and they would know where you were and when you were there. So let's say that you drove through an area that has a significantly ecological area as far as species or flowers or for whatever reason. And it may have been overcast, and so then you have contributed to inequity among species now and in the future. So the amount of gasoline, the purchase price for that gasoline would be according to how much damage it is perceived that you have done to that area. Now that's what this is talking about. Now part of the stimulus money is going to broadband, and in this report it's talking about whether or not they're going to use the satellite system or a broadband system in order to monitor where your car's been. So now, the next slide is going to be my opinion. Now you can go read that, but that's just what pretty much